10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
Okay, well, good day and welcome to The Journalists. Today we are joined by journalist Sarah Baker from Sylvan Lake News, Peter Carter, a reporter and an analysis editor for Law 360 Canada, and Diane Sims, editor, reporter, broadcaster, and author. Good morning to you all.
Morning, Bruce.
Good morning.
Good morning.
First off, Diane has published her memoirs, Living Beyond the Shadows. Tell us about your book, Diane.
Actually, it's called Living Beyond the Shadow. And it begins with my first attack of MS when I was 14. And it carries on through my life. And I was diagnosed at 17, and then my parents' reaction, which wasn't good, and my fight to make it through university, and
We lost your sound.
I had my master's at 31, and the MS carried on, but I carried on, and I kept fighting. And I worked at the London Free Press. I worked at Legion magazine. I worked at the universe's greatest newspaper, the Manitoulin Expositor. And then I jumped ship and became corporate editor of a Crown corporation, and I was responsible for 7 publications.
Now,
Sorry. And then my book goes through how a year and 4 months after that, I developed ovarian cancer, and I was given a year to live. Well, I fought that, and then it returned in my breasts, and so I had to fight that. And right now I'm fighting a dying colon, and a lot of extra pain in my legs, and I've made the decision to die with MAID, medical assistance in dying. And because the thought of not being able to communicate, and a feeding pump, and being put in a nursing home, it just sickens me. If I can't communicate, then that's it for me.
Mhm. Yeah, well, MAID is still a really very controversial subject in Canada, Diane. And with the very apparent conservative victory in the upcoming federal election, do you see Polyev doing anything to stop the access to MAID?
Yes, I do. I'm very worried about that. He certainly will not um, allow any further actions on made, any further developments, and I'm afraid he might rescind, he might try to have that law disallowed.
Like, I mean, Peter, this is something that's going on because the conservatives have latched on to so many social issues. And how do you see this evolving? Obviously you cannot project what the guy is going to do, but he has come out and made some rather controversial statements in terms of different things like gay rights and transgender rights, and certainly a lot to do with the MAID.
I think for one thing, he's running for election, and I've been involved with politics long enough to know that what somebody says when they run for elections sometimes has something to do with what some relationship to what they actually end up doing. But I'm from all sides of the spectrum. Does the spectrum have sides? Anyway, from all angles, politicians running for election do not necessarily carry out what they say they're going to carry out. I mean, that's almost sadly true. But so I've come to, I don't expect him to do all the things he says. That takes a while to get these things done. I think I get the impression that Polyev thinks he can change the bureaucracy really quickly, and can't imagine it happening.
Well, Sarah,
he's up against people like Diane Sims, and I wouldn't want to be up against people like Diane Sims. I'm keeping her on my side.
Sarah, obviously, we're both in the province of Alberta, which is the most conservative province in Canada. What is the general impression in Sylvan Lake?
Unmade.
Yes.
I mean, obviously it varies. Like, there's some people that are for it, there's some people that are against it, and there's some people that will never do it themselves, but they're also not going to be against somebody else doing it. Like, it's a your body, your choice sort of thing, in their opinion. So there's like, it's a very controversial topic because there's so many people on each side that it's just, yeah.
Okay. Moving on to journalism. Many resources have been removed from investigative journalism with the cancellations of programs like W5 and with the conservative initiative to eliminate the CBC, which will probably end programs such as The Fifth Estate. Where does that leave the media's ability to actually report in-depth news accurately? Peter.
Me.
Yeah, we'll go with you first.
I'm thinking the media isn't a function of the government. The media is a function of the media, and I don't think that I don't rely on the government to give me any. I don't rely on them to make my work better. I rely on myself, and I'm very optimistic about the media in Canada because young people are smarter, they're faster thinkers, they're more inventive than our generation were. They're more idealistic, they're more connected. I'm not a pessimist about what Polyev can do to the media. I don't even think about it. I mean, I think about the Sarahs of the world who are taking over, and they know how to do it right. Polyev's fighting yesterday's battles, man.
I was just thinking more along the lines, Peter, is the fact is that there is so little resources left to put into the investigation.
You don't need them like you don't need the resources like we used to need them, right? Yeah. We have this computer here. This machine I'm sitting in front of has all the information that's necessary for me to know. I just have to know how to access it. I don't know how to access it, but Sarah knows how to access it. I don't think we're losing resources. I think we have more resources. We have way more resources. I can access all the documents I want sitting here in my room. And the myth that we're losing all these resources when in fact we're gaining them. What we're losing is media jobs. I'll guarantee that. But it doesn't take that many people to do a job anymore. We used to have, remember when you and I worked in the newspaper business, there were guys who had these things called printing presses, right? There were layout artists, typesetters. Those jobs don't exist anymore, and I'm okay with this. And my job may not exist, an editor job may not exist, but some other job will. I'm not worried about the media. I'm worried about other things, but not the media.
Okay. Diane, do you want to comment on that?
I agree with Peter, except I'd like to say as big media shuts down its community arms such as Metroland and oh, what's the other one that shut down, Peter?
I know what you're talking about. I don't know the name of the company. They seem to be being replaced by like the Village Media. It's doing a wonderful job.
Well, they're being replaced by community media is starting up again.
I know.
And the Beacon Herald here in town only publishes 3 days a week.
Yeah.
And we have a new newspaper,
That's
the
fantastic.
Stratford Times, and a guy in St. Mary's about 15 minutes from here, their paper shut down. So he started a paper, and then he's now got 12 in the area, and Metroland, somebody else has picked up started a bunch of papers that Metroland killed.
Yeah.
So
We're like weeds. You
I'm
can't keep us down, right?
worried about print media right now. But I'm not worried. I'm not worried because there's so many resources, as Peter said, and
Yep.
and Bruce, you're concerned about investigative journalism. I'm not, because of the resources and everything that's at our fingertips. Whereas we used to have to run to libraries and archives and
Yeah. Took a lot of effort.
Days.
Also, I was saying this to my wife the other day that I'll say it to anybody who listens. In the old days, we could get away with BS, and you can't get away with it anymore. If I was the editor of the Expositor, and I did something that a reader didn't like, and they wrote me a letter, I could ignore the letter if I wanted to, or I could run the letter, and that would be it. But now people will come back at you until you prove that you've made the amends. You can't
Sarah,
get away with
how do you feel?
About your last question?
Yes.
Okay, yeah, I wholly agree with what everybody else has said. As somebody that works in the journalism field, I do have accesses to resources really, really easily. I can access court casing files from the Court of King's Bench in Red Deer, which is the one we deal with in Sylvan, because that's usually where the Sylvan people go when they're getting charged with something, is the Court of King's Bench in Red Deer. It's a simple thing as emailing the Court of King's Bench and making a request, specifying the person, specifying the civil, if it's a civil suit, if it's not a civil suit, and they'll send you all that information. We have media contacts for RCMP members. We have media contacts for pretty much every business organization or something like that. And then when it comes to doing research for a more investigative piece, all of that you can find online. You can find online really, really easily.
Yeah.
We could moving on to the American election. President-elect Donald Trump has promised to start a program of mass deportation. Canada's borders will once again be flooded with those seeking asylum inside Canada. How can Canada even be prepared to deal with the potential flood of migrants?
You know what? I don't think Canada's going to deal with it because Trudeau has already come out and said that he's going to limit the number of immigrants allowed in Canada. And there's a difference between an immigrant and a refugee. Refugees, yes, there is a process for them to come in, and they should come in if they will be facing persecution or death or something in the country they originally come from. They can seek refugee status, which is very much different than seeking immigration status, a whole new ballgame. And because there's already been something where Trudeau has said he's going to limit the amount of immigrants that are allowed to come to Canada, and that is a promise he has made to the Canadian people, I really don't see the flood of people coming or supposedly coming being as bad as it's being projected right now.
Peter?
I just talking to somebody a writer from the Toronto Star just before this meeting. I read we were talking about this issue itself, because he was talking about influx of Indians from India, and how he's seeing on Reddit people saying there's pushback against the Indians. And people actually say this old-fashioned, incorrect, but constant criticism, or they're taking our jobs, right? And there's no evidence that happens. They create jobs. They take the jobs that nobody here wants. They work harder than everybody else. God forbid I have to work as hard as a new Canadian to feed my family, because I can't work that hard. I think it's based on a myth that immigrants are causing problems. Canada's always been, we've been a garden of immigrants, right? Maybe we'll get a tsunami of rich white Americans who want to avoid the Republicans. They may show up here.
Diane, do you want to comment on that?
Trudeau's already shut down certain borders where people were coming out, certain areas of the border where people were coming across, and I think the West is going to be more careful about the immigrants coming across. And I totally agree with Sarah, the difference between refugee and immigrant, and not all of the immigrants can claim refugee status.
Okay, so another thing that Trump has also planned and promised the American people is a 10% tariff on all imported goods from other countries. Canada relies, 75% of its trade relies on goods crossing the American border. How do you see this affecting the Canadian industry?
Is that an open question, or can just Sarah answer that one best?
Diane was just getting ready to go here.
Oh, sorry.
I'll let Diane start, yeah.
Well, 10% has already been imposed on many products, many Chrystia Freeland have been able to negotiate some down a bit. I think we will survive. And we will find new markets.
What did you say last time?
Anyway,
She
go
said,
ahead.
no, she said we would find new markets. Go ahead, Peter.
That's what I was thinking too.
Yeah. Sarah?
What did you say, Peter?
I think, you know, we're resilient and we'll find new markets.
Yep.
Is there anything else you'd like to add to that, Peter? No? Okay, Sarah?
Yeah, no, there's nothing really more I think I'd like to add to this statement other than that's what's already been said.
Exactly. Well, guys, I really want to thank you for joining me. We should do this more often.
That was fun. I
So
felt my
thank you all.
IQ go up just by being in you guys' presence.
I'd like to thank Sarah Baker, Peter Carter, and Diane Sims for joining me today on The Journalists. I hope you have a pleasant day.